So you've just finished your sprint and the demo is tomorrow. And suddenly you realize half the stories are still in progress. QA hasn't passed anything and your client is expecting a delivery tomorrow. Well, congratulations. Your sprint has failed. Well, I've been there and it feels like a gut punch, almost a gut punch as a project manager. Today, I'll share exactly what I do to recover from a failed sprint and turn disaster into a lesson for my team so that it almost never happens again. Let me tell you a story. Back in 2021, I was managing a mobile app development project for a fintech client. I remember it was a 2 week sprint and the client was expecting a QR payment feature in the demo. So we had around 8 stories in the sprint that we planned. But on the final day, we only managed to complete 3 stories, while 2 stories were still in code review. And worst of all, QA hadn't even started regression. Well, the client was on the demo call and we had nothing to show. And I'd be honest, it was one of the most stressful moments as a project manager. So what went wrong actually? Well, dependencies weren't tracked, stories were too big, and worst of all, we had last minute production support that killed our developers' focus. This is when I realized sprints fail not just because of work, rather, they fail because of process gaps. Here's the 5 step framework that I follow whenever a sprint fails. And trust me, it works. Doesn't matter if you're a fresh project manager or handling $1 million accounts. Step 1, own the failure. Communicate transparently with the client and stakeholders. Well, we didn't meet our sprint goal. But here's what we learned, and this is how we will recover. Avoid blaming developers or QAs. Remember, a project manager must own delivery. And don't forget, transparency builds trust, even when velocity dips. Analyze sprint breakdown. Check metrics to find the cause. Velocity versus commitment. Check your team's velocity and the number of stories that you've handpicked for the sprint. You see the gap? That's overcommitment. Review cycle time. How much time does an average story takes to finish by your team? And see if stories that you targeted are too large. Inspect block items. While handpicking stories in sprint planning, were there any dependencies that were ignored? Use cumulative flow diagram to see where stories got stuck. Here's a quick tip. Run a mini retro immediately with the team instead of waiting for next sprint retrospective. Step 3. Create a recovery plan. Identify critical stories that must go first in the next sprint. Consider an additional short 1 week recovery sprint to finish incomplete work. If client's trust is shaky, deliver a small MVP increment as soon as possible. Step 4. Optimize your process. Break down big user stories into smaller tasks to avoid any spillovers. Set work in progress limits to prevent too many in progress items. Apply shift left testing. QA starts testing as developer finishes, not as sprint ends. Here's the lesson. Failed sprints often reveal process bottlenecks, not just effort issues. Step 5. Reset your team morale. Failed sprints can kill your team's morale if not handled well. Celebrate small wins. In retro meetings, focus on improvements, not blaming others. A motivated team recovers faster than a frustrated team. Remember the fintech project that I mentioned? So just by following these 5 steps, within the next 2 sprints, we were back to 100% sprint goal success. So here's the takeaway for every project manager: sprints fail. What matters is how fast you recover and prevent in the future. Have you ever had a sprint fail miserably? Drop your story in the comments. I would love to learn from your experience. If you found this video useful, hit like and subscribe for real project management stories and strategies that you can apply to your own projects.